All right, guys, this is the video for week 7 of the conversations during the summer of 2022, the conversation series, Complexity and Justice. We've been talking about various kinds of cognitive maps. And today I want to introduce to you the Transformation Octave. It's the, well, we got the Just Conflict map too, but of the colorful maps, this is the last of the ones that I'm going to introduce to you. So I want you to remember that we are developing cognitive maps for our capacity to be our best selves in our best relationships with others, because we have to be grounded in what is real, and we don't have direct access to what is real. We use various kinds of cognitive maps to make sense of the world. And so the way that we make sense of the world then gives us a connection to what is actually going on. So we want to be able to gather as robust and effective maps as we can. And those maps will need to be comprehensive in the sense that we want them to take into account all of the relevant data. I can have a really good map that only explains a part of the problem, and I keep running into trouble and I think, oh, what's going on here? I can't, because it doesn't take into account some things that are actually relevant to the system that I have defined, that I'm trying to study, that I'm trying to make sense of. Okay? It also needs to be complex enough, particularly to the degree to which I have a dynamic system that I'm trying to understand. The map has to have enough complexity to it that it can take into account all of those dynamics. And that means it's going to be, it could be overwhelming, but I want to make it simple enough that I can actually make sense of it. So we're looking for maps that are comprehensive and complex and simple, which seems contradictory because it is, right? Which we're trying to kind of find the sweet spot here. So to take into account enough of the information with enough complexity, but makes it simple enough that I can make sense of it. Now, our capacity to do that is something that grows over time. Our cognitive ability is something that we see that we can enhance through various kinds of activities. But we want to be able to distinguish the different kinds of cognitive ability that we have. So one of the abilities we have is what we call intelligence. Now, intelligence is a measure of how well can I, from measuring my intelligence, how well can I make sense of things? There's something happening in the world. I have a cognitive map that makes sense of it. How quickly and fully can I process that information such that I'm coming to an accurate perception? Now, intelligence is something that we can really enhance by early childhood education, by helping kids think better earlier in their lives. The more that they can use their cognitive ability and build their brain as their brains are growing, the more intelligent they're going to be for the rest of their lives. This is a part of why early childhood education is so vital. My wife's a language teacher, and she says it's very hard for someone to learn a language, to speak a language well enough that they can sound like a native speaker, if they weren't learning that language before the age of 10 or 12. Language is relatively easy for us to appropriate when we're little kids. It gets much harder to do it later on in life. So intelligence is something that does grow in our early life, but it gets harder and harder as we get older. Now, information, knowledge, the more data points I have, and the more I have data points that are actually factual, that's something we can do all of our lives. And typically, as we get older, we discover new ways of gaining knowledge, or actually the technologies for knowledge gathering increase. I mean, boy, do I wish Wikipedia were there when I was back in high school. So there are different ways that we can gather knowledge and access that. And that's something that we can continue to do through our lifespan. Now, wisdom is the process of being able to use more and more complex maps, discerning what is in fact the relevant data, and being able to find patterns in what might otherwise seem like very subtle information. And so wisdom is something that continues to grow over our lifetime, and it's actually fairly rare for someone young to have wisdom. It's something that can grow over time. But you can be an old person and not have any wisdom. So this is basically what we're looking to be able to do here, is to gather our capacity for wisdom, that is, to be able to find valid meaning from more and more complex ways of seeing the world. Right, so how do we do that? We do that by changing who we are, how we see the world, how we show up in it. But I want us to be clear that there are different kinds of change. So one form of change is I can change my shirt, I can change a tire. I'm swapping out one thing for another, changing a light bulb. So we haven't really changed the system, we've changed the components in the system such that we can maybe restore better functioning. Right? So there's also scaling, making larger or smaller. So I can change my weight, I can change the temperature on the thermostat. So there are various things that we can adjust which form a kind of change, but we still haven't fundamentally altered the system. We're just changing how it is that the system will function. Because I'm now going to carry more weight, and if I'm a center on a football team, I want to have a lot of it. If I'm a model, I don't want to have very much of it. So what is the optimal weight? What's the optimal temperature? So how do we adjust that? But there's also shifts that happen within a hierarchy. So I change my ability to make mathematical computations. I change my ability to speak clearly or to write eloquently. So these are changes that are movement along a hierarchy. And we can move up the hierarchy or we can move down. We can regress. We can evolve or devolve. So that's a different kind of change. So I wanted you to think of growth is making the system bigger in some sense, where the system itself that we are studying or that we have defined here, that we're looking at, my weight, my car, my community, the size of the system may change. But transformation is moving up the hierarchy. It is a movement from one stage to a structurally more complex and effective stage of development. Now, this is something that happens all the time, naturally, if we are in the right circumstances. So next week, we're going to talk about how do we create the right circumstances. But for this week, I want us to have access to a cognitive map that I call the Transformation Octave. It's something that really, this is, of all the maps, this is probably the one that is most something I have created, discovered, but it's not something that I did all by myself, because it's built upon the work of others, most notably George Gurdjieff, Otto Scharmer, in Theory U, and there are probably a lot of other sources here too, but you will recognize from your own experience some of the resources, the experiences that say, oh yeah, this makes sense to me. So I want to do a kind of a quick run through of this, so that you just got a clear handle on it, and then I'm going to refer you to my webpage, which allows you to kind of see more specifically what's going on here. So in this, this is at justconflict.org, and from here, we're going to see the summary and summary of the Transformation Octave. And so this is going to give you both a copy of the map, but also kind of walk through the various points and the transitions between the points. So one of the things that I want to bring up here is this Transformation Octave. And so I want to describe to you why this is an octave. So George Gurdjieff, in his discoveries of the basic laws by which things come into being, he gave us the law of three, which is basically what we now understand in complexity theory as emergence, and the law of seven, which is something that I tried for years to wrap my head around. and playing around with this, the idea of an octave, and then coming across Otto Scharmer's theory U, I discovered that this is, Scharmer has 6, and I thought if he just had one more, he'd have 7. And then I could see that, okay, there's this one thing that he's got. This is actually 2 things in one stage. And so I was able to kind of elaborate on the work that he had done and came up with this transformation octave. So if we're going to be up here at Do, if we consider that this is the root of the octave, we go from Do to Re to Mi, and then a half step to Fa, and then So, La, Ti, and Do. So we've got Do again, which are the same note an octave apart. As we experience this in terms of our own lives, at Do, we are, everything's great, man. The system's functioning, everything's at peace. This is shalom. It's working for me. And then Re happens. Oh, something's not right here. So there's some disruption. So the movement from Do to Re is saying, am I going to pay attention to what it is that isn't working? Is this a big enough problem that I'm actually going to address it? And it may be something that's been bugging me for a while, and I'm just not, I am so comfortable here at Do that I don't want to go to Re, but it gets big enough that, okay, I'm going to actually look at it. So I'm going to look at this irritation, this disruption, and in that, I'm going to say, okay, what is going on for me? At Do here, what does it mean to me if I go to these multiple meanings here? What are all the things that I can make this thing mean so that I can make sense of it? Now, one of the things that I already know is that this disruption is something that is experienced by me as a conflict. This is not a problem that I already know how to solve. So the meaning that I'm making is not adequate to solve it. So I'm going to have to go from this meaning all the way up to Fa, which as a half step is actually harder to hit. There's more energy to make a half step. If I'm going to move all the way to Fa. And at Fa, I'm saying, I'm going to listen to other people's perspectives. I'm going to read a book about this. I'm going to look at a YouTube video. I'm going to find people who are looking at the same thing that's bugging me from as different a perspective as possible. Because the more I can find perspectives that are different from the one I'm using, the greater depth that's going to give me. So at Fa here, I am gathering this stuff together, and I'm going to use it to form a more complex map. I'm going to construct a way of thinking about this problem that allows me to make sense of it in a fuller way. So it's So here. Now I have created this map. Now I want to move here from making myself the subject of this problem. And I'm going to step back and look at it and listen to this new map. So at La, the relationship that I have to this is to say, okay, what does this teach me? What does this make possible? What new opportunities exist for me because of La, so that I can find a new way of being? I'm going to move up here to T and figure out what could I do differently that is actually going to make a difference. And from T, there's this another half step up to Do, which is back where I started. No, it's not where I started. It's an octave higher. So this is a very quick run through of what I mean for us to be doing here and making sense of the transformation octave. There's more in the, if you want to go to the justconflict.org, under the summary tab, let's say, of the transformation octave, you can read through this and get a deeper understanding there. And what we're going to do is we're going to take examples of transformation, and we're going to look at how our own experience of transformation follows this pattern. Now, I do want to be clear that We don't always take all of these steps in exactly the same order. Sometimes we'll take things out of order. They, it is itself a dynamic system, and so one thing influences another, and we'll get to one place. So maybe we're up here at La listening to it, and we say, wait a minute, this doesn't work, and so we want to go back to Fa and get some new information. So wait, that's not doing it. We got to go back here and then work our way back up again. All right. So I hope this gives us a good start, and I will see you Thursday.